from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Friday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, and we're looking to speak with you all. Give us a call if you'd like to join our late night national town hall conversation. 866-505-4626. The legacy line continues. Of course, the studio line, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And today is Flag Day. It's also President Trump's birthday. Big happy birthday shout out to President Trump. The Supreme Court has struck down the federal ban on bump stocks, which I think was probably a fair thing to do, right? Because these are not guns per se. This isn't something that should be regulated like a gun. You know, if you buy something that makes your gun work better or worse or whatever, I don't think that's necessarily no, I don't mean like, you know, changing it from like the chips that they sell to make it, you know, semi-auto to auto. I think this gives you a little more speed, a little more precision. But anyway, I think, you know, the minute you start banning every last accessory for a gun, the next thing you ban bullets, the next thing you got no gun. And that's where it's a slippery slope. So I don't look at the individuality of this. I look at the entirety of it. How much can you ban before we ban guns themselves? And we don't want to ban guns themselves, so we don't do it. Let's see. Yesterday I mentioned that a judge had blocked Biden's Title IX changes, which is a good thing. Let me see. Democrats obviously nuts because of Trump's visit to Capitol Hill. Got plenty of audio of Democrats melting down about this. And a bunch of things I want to get into tonight. May not get into all of it right now. You might have to stick around until the third and final hour for some of my off-the-wall stuff that I want to talk about. But there is, you know, there's a phenomena that is known as foreign accent syndrome. And it happens when people suffer some sort of head trauma and they can come to after they've been unconscious, speaking in a different language, you know? So, you know, it's like you get up during a commercial break, you hit your head, and you come back talking like this, you know? And you have some sort of a Australian/British accent. I'm not good at either of those, but that type of thing. So I want to get into a couple of cases of that because I think that's pretty funny and it's very interesting. Let me see what else we got. The DOJ says they're not going to prosecute their boss, Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland, who refused to hand over the audio recordings of the transcripts that he'd handed over of the special counsel, her interview. They said, we're not going to do it. And obviously, that's their boss. So what are they going to do? Let me see. That's a stupid story. I don't think that's good. Demolition of building where Parkland shooting took place. Okay. Boeing. Oh, man, this is an interesting one. So Boeing is now being probed by the Federal Aviation Commission, or administration, rather, because they used counterfeit titanium in airplane parts. Now, I couldn't help but think, man, that had to be something that came from China. I mean, who makes better counterfeits of anything than China? I don't know that for a fact. I haven't even looked at this story. I just saw the headline and I heard it earlier when I was in the car. But ultimately, big deal, right? Whether you're using cheap steel in American bridges, fake titanium in American planes, this is a problem, Houston. So we're going to get into that a little bit later as well. And let's see. Oh, man, this is good. We're going to have some good open phone America tonight. We got a lot of good stories that are kind of off the beaten path. Anyway, regarding the bump stocks, the Vice President of the United States, none other than Que Mala Eres, she spoke out today Listen to cut number 26.
It was bump stocks that resulted in 60 people being dead in Las Vegas, Nevada on 1 October. And
hold on
what
a second.
The court
Hold
did
on.
today is really
so it wasn't bump stocks that caused the death of 60 people in Las Vegas. It was a shooter that was shooting at people that caused the death of 60 people in Las Vegas. Now, I think there's a couple. Is there any seconds left in there? Okay, yeah, that was it. It was just airplane noise in the background. She's trying to put, this is the problem that we have. And listen, I don't know if it's because conservatism runs in my blood or DNA, which I don't think it does. I think it's a common sense choice that I make. But I've never, ever, ever, ever believed that guns are violent, that guns kill people, that these are just nonsensical things to me. People kill people. Guns don't kill people. That's as obvious as the day is long, right? I mean, the gun won't do anything by itself. It'll sit in the gun safe until a person comes and does something with it, just like a hammer, just like a car, just like a computer, like whatever. Anything that you could use to hurt somebody. I understand a gun gives you a nice projectile and you can have more precision with it, granted. But it doesn't, just because it makes it easier than using these other aforementioned products, it doesn't mean that the gun in of itself is a problem. And the same way with the bump stock, the same way with the loss of those lives. Some lunatic that dragged all these suitcases with guns and decided to open fire on people, that's why they're dead. Because there's a lunatic, an evil person doing evil things. Anyway, I don't want to preach to the choir on that stuff because I think that's a given. But as many of you know, this month is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I believe that's the official title. And most people are talking about something called Pride this month. My timeline on my social media seems to be flooded with that, with mental health for men. And I think it's important that we talk about that. And there is a topic that we're going to get into on the other side of the break that I think is going to be interesting. I have not spoken with this guest before, but it is an interesting topic, albeit a provocative one, I think. I think it's appropriate for Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to be doing that straight ahead. So I don't want you to go anywhere. 833-482-5337 if you want to join us. We'll be doing some calls at, I guess, maybe 10:40-ish, 10:50-ish. And that number again, 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to get into this book, right? The book is called The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Our guest is Sam Jolman. He is a licensed professional counselor and the author of the book that I just mentioned. Sam, welcome to the program, sir.
Rich, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so privileged.
No, likewise. I it's an honor. And I'm really interested in knowing this because whenever I see a good title, I think, that's pretty good, and is the book is it going to be as good as the title? And I'm sure that it's going to be. But what I find interesting here is how you go about reclaiming the heart of masculine sexuality and simultaneously saying that this is the sex talk that you've never gotten. And I think that's probably true because we live in a very complicated age where sexuality for many people is a very fluid thing that is, whatever people make it out to be, but not necessarily what it was when I was growing up, right? Which is kind of a kind of hard and fast thing. So let's talk about your book, why you wrote it, and the overall premise of what you're trying to put out there as a message.
Yeah, as a counselor, I sit with a lot of men, and I've heard hundreds of stories from guys that led me to conclude sexuality is actually probably the place we've had the least meaningful conversations in our lives, right? We're, as men, kind of overly sexualized, right? We're sold anything and everything through sex appeal, but we've actually probably had the least deep, meaningful conversations about it. Maybe we talk in locker room jokes or sex jokes, right? But we don't get any kind of meaningful, heartfelt conversation. And I was finding just this theme among my clients as men, that this is a place they end up struggling in this kind of silent shame with, this should just work is kind of the implication, right? That it should just run itself. And most guys at some point in their life run into some kind of sexual struggle or relationship struggle around their sexuality, or shame, or have stories of harm that they've never addressed in their life. And so I thought, man, we've got to have a better place and a better way for men to talk about their sexuality. So I wrote a book on it.
Sam Jolman is a licensed professional counselor and the author of The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Now, you mentioned a lot of things, so I guess we're going to unpack those, and we have, the next couple of segments to do it. And I'm really interested in this because you said a lot, right? One of the first things you said was it's taboo, right? We haven't done it. We haven't had a meaningful conversation. And I would agree with that. And I, again, my angle is always political, social commentary. And I would say that a big part of that likely has come from the feminist movement that kind of poo-pooed the idea that men are sexual beings and made it okay for women to kind of be sexual beings and live your life, do your thing, enjoy yourself, but men not so much. And I think that's something that it still permeates in society today. So I think that's part of it. But you're right. I think men do go through all sorts of different things, and every man has a unique history. So in your practice, when people are coming to you, what is the common theme that you're finding when people go out? And I ask this because as a young man, you talk to your friends about all sorts of things, but it was never really meaningful, right? But now, in my 40s, I find myself when we get together, me and my buddies, to have a beer, watch a game, that type of thing, the conversations usually focus on relationship dynamics, not so much about sexuality.
Yeah.
But they're also, to me, it's very eye-opening that some of my closest friends, we're having some very interesting conversations that one would have thought we might have had these conversations elsewhere or before, but we hadn't. So you have a bunch of guys that are in their mid-40s talking about, very rudimentary things that we probably should have learned in our 20s.
Yeah. There is this sense, I think, in our culture that men just want sex, right? And even there's this pressure, I would say, on men that's what they have to live up to is you just want sex and you're good, right? And what you're putting on display through the conversations you're having with your friends and the same kinds of conversations I have with my clients and my friends, also in my 40s, is men don't just want sex. And oftentimes when I talk to men in counseling, it's almost like they have to tell me in secret, hey, sometimes I kind of feel like the woman in the relationship because I actually want the emotional stuff. I actually want to connect and have relationship. And that's not something that's prevalent in our culture among masculine culture. And yet it's every man wants more than sex. And again, even for men that say, that's all I really want, right? When I ask them, well, what do you love about it? Right? Often they'll tell me, well, I love connection. I love physical affection and touch. And a lot of times guys will say, I just love feeling wanted and pursued. Right. And those aren't things we are, like our masculine culture allows us to talk about openly. So that's why I'm writing the book as well, to try to get to guys that feel, maybe they feel like they just want sex, right? And like, is there more? Yes, there's a whole lot more. But as you're naming, most guys know, I don't just want sex. I want relationship and goodness and connection and closeness. And I'm trying to start a better conversation among us men about those sorts of things. All of that fits under the sex talk. And, because a lot of times when we grow up, it's not just one sex talk that we're meant to get, right? A lot of guys, if they did get something It's the basic anatomy lesson or the don't screw it up lecture, right?
Yeah,
but they aren't taught about romance. They aren't taught about how to pursue a woman's heart. They aren't taught about what do you do when you have marriage struggles. All of that is a part of the sex talk. All of that is a part of how you love, how you give and receive love in relationship, in marriage.
Fascinating. As you're saying that, I'm trying to unpack it in my mind, and I realize that men and women are very, very different. And as the famous book about being from Mars and Venus and whatnot, I feel like that's very true. And when you say the things he has just said, like wanting closeness, wanting intimacy, wanting affection and touch, all of these things can easily be translated into sex and misconstrued as wanting sex, when in fact it may not be the actual desire of the man to have sex. It's just they're looking for those things, that closeness, that wanting to be wanted type of thing that you mentioned. So I think that's fascinating, and it's something that we should probably unpack a little bit more, because I think that, to me, I think is the fundamental divide that men and women have, where they get close, and then women think, "Oh, here you go again. That's the only thing on your mind," and
yeah.
And it's not, right. It's
right.
Clearly something else, as you're describing. Right,
and sometimes it's true that sex is the only way men know how to ask for connection or closeness.
Right.
There's a researcher, Sue Johnson, who discovered that boys, when they're young, as babies, as children, are held less than girls. So boys naturally, or not naturally, but statistically, are held less, get less touch. And Sue Johnson pointed out, she said, she's also a counselor, and she said, I always tell my women clients when they say, my husband just wants sex all the time, she says, well, I would too if the only place I could get touch was the football field or sex. So wow. Here we are, right? As men, we don't have a lot of language for like, hey, you actually, there's a lot more to you, and yes, are men and women different? Yes. Statistically, sort of in bell curves, men want sex more than women, but that's a bell curve. And there are lots of relationships where the women want sex more than men. I think the statistic is about 30% of couples that's true. So, or 19% of couples, sorry. But again, I'm trying to invite men into their deeper heart here, to say there's more to the story. There's more to the conversation.
Well, we're going to get to the rest of the conversation and the rest of the story straight ahead with Sam Jolman, licensed professional counselor and author of The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Folks, we're talking about sex here on America at Night with me, Rich Valdez, and our guest, Sam Jolman. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation. It's Friday night. We're letting our hair down, and we're talking about sex. In particular, all the tangential stuff that goes with sex, or even that gets misconstrued as sex, right? And we're doing that conversation right now with Sam Jolman. He's a licensed professional counselor and the author of The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. And before the break, we were speaking about how men, in particular, that's the subject of the book, only know how to express their desire for intimacy, touch, feeling wanted, other types of affection through sex. For some men. Others crave it and don't know how to kind of put that together. So I want to pick up where we left off. Sam Jolman.
Yes. I am certainly not wanting to, dismiss the fact it is good that you as a man want sex. This is a good part of you. It's good, in romance, to have a place for that passionate expression of love. I'm just inviting men. There's a difference between having sex and making love, right? And we kind of know that, But how do we talk about that, right? How do you know the difference between, okay, you had sex versus you made love, right? And I think every man wants to be, at his heart, that good lover, right? Who really made love to his wife. And that's what I'm trying to invite men into. How do you be that guy? It's different than just being able to perform, and it involves your heart.
So what can readers expect when they pick up the book? You mentioned a lot of things on the way in of different issues that men deal with that you've discovered in your practice. And I'm guessing there are some common themes, there are common obstacles that you find when you're counseling people. What are some of those?
Yeah, this is a book written for men after the fact. Some people have asked, is this a book for teenagers? No, it's not a book for teenagers outright. I hope you read it and it will help you talk to your kids better. But this is really a book for men after the fact, years later, decades later, where you've run into struggle or in some way have wrestled around your sexuality with some kind of struggle. And the invitation, there are the things that I see that are common, certainly shame. Men have shame around their sexuality. And again, they may not feel it as that. Most guys come into counseling with some kind of either personal struggle, relationship struggle, or something in their life is on fire. And eventually we start to get back to some of their story. Men have a lot of things buried in their story that they don't talk about. A lot of guys will say to me, there's some weird things that happened when I was younger. Or there are things that have happened to me or that I've done that I plan to take to my grave, right? There's these things that haunt men from the past. And
You're
a lot of guys
about
just think, I got
childhood abuse and things like that?
Right. Because it's not like your sexuality lives your life with you, right? It's living the same story with you. It doesn't just sort of sit on a shelf somewhere until you use it, right? It's right there with you. So guys have parts of their stories, and the statistic is 1 in 6 guys has some form of overt sexual abuse in his past. And that's heavy stuff to talk about. I'm aware of that. But at that stuff, if you just push it away, it ends up showing up in your story, ends up showing up in your relationships, and it can bring shame or conflict or struggle or make you shut down or make you get angry or make you not know how to talk about it. So one of the things I see is the need for men to talk through some of the things that have happened since they were teenagers, since they were kids, right? So that stuff doesn't run their life or doesn't haunt them from the past. That's one thing, because a lot of times what shows up there is shame, right? And shame is this weird thing. What is shame? Shame is this sense of feeling bad about yourself, dirty, perverted, like you're a monster, that something's really broken about you. And it makes men shut down, or it makes men act out in some way and not know how to show up with their heart. So I'm inviting men into that story to walk through some of the things that did shape your sexual formation. I call it, it's the chapter called Your Real Sex Education, meaning, right, there's what you learn maybe in a conversation, or maybe you didn't get anything, but then there's also what you experienced, and that stuff shaped you. Even things like your first love or your first broken heart moment with a girl, right? Like that stuff can stay with you. And we don't have a lot of places to talk about that. We don't have a lot of ways to know how to deal with that stuff. So I'm trying to give men some of those tools in the book. Hey, let's walk through this. So that's one major theme that I see with men. The other thing I'd say is, just inviting men to know how to deal with what moves in them around women, around seeing a beautiful person, right? Like there can be a pull to believe, how do I cope with that? How do I live well with experiencing beauty in another person? So I'm helping men with the tools to know how to walk well with their sexuality and bless its passion. So those would be a couple things that I noticed.
I want to understand that second one. You're saying that you're experiencing men that have difficulty appreciating the beauty of a woman?
Well, let's be honest, right? There's a lot of harm in the world in the name of male sexuality. There's no question about that. I think the statistic is like 90% of sexual abuse is perpetrated by men. And that's overt sexual abuse. I'm not saying 90% of men do this. No.
Right.
Don't read that backwards, right? I'm saying when there's been sexual abuse, 90% of the time it's men who perpetrate the abuse. There's a study that was done that says 87% of women have experienced catcalls, right? Unwanted sexual advances. So there's a way in which we don't know as men how to live this well that doesn't, bring harm inadvertently to other people, to other women. And so I'm trying to invite men like, hey, there's a way that this can go really bad, right? There's a way that this could bring harm to those around you. And some men don't realize, hey, do you know those catcalls? Do you know some of those unwanted sexual advances bring a lot of harm to women and create a lot of fear? I know, a good man doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be that guy, right? So I'm inviting men. Like,
nobody wants to be Harvey Weinstein.
Yes, exactly. Right. You don't want to be that guy who's known as being a womanizer or an objectifier, right? Who mistreats women or sexualizes women for your own pleasure. That's not cool. That's not a good lover-hearted man. So I'm inviting men. How do you appreciate a woman well, with respect and dignity, right? But also not shut down what happens in you, right? We're not saying that men are pigs, just by their DNA. No, we're saying something goes wrong, right? Men aren't taught how to appreciate beauty and reverence it well in another person. So that's also the conversation I'm having is, right, your own personal story, your own personal shame, as I said, but also then, how do you live this well in the world so it brings flourishing and goodness to other people, including your wife, but, the whole world in a sense.
Folks, we're coming right back with Sam Jolman. He is a licensed professional counselor and the author of the book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. Quite an interesting topic with more layers than I anticipated it having. Very, very interesting indeed. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And we're talking about the book, The Sex Talk You Never Got, Reclaiming the Heart of Masculine Sexuality. The author is our guest, Sam Jolman. I want you in this final segment that we have together to really kind of bring it home and let the listeners understand what they can expect to take away from the book and how they will be that much better for having, gone through this journey with you in the book.
Yeah, I wrote the book not just to give you information, although I have information in there, and I tried to pump it full of as much, good, healthy information as I could. But I intended with this book also to give you something of what I call a blessing of your sexuality, right? When something is talked about well, right, it makes us feel validated. And I think that's something that men missed in not getting a good, healthy sex talk in their lives is it kind of gives a blessing, right? When we don't talk about something, right? If there's something in your family that doesn't get talked about and you just kind of know, hey, we don't talk about this, right? It inherently kind of gives this sense of shame to that subject. Like that's a bad thing, right? So the same is true of boys and young men, and when they come of age and they don't get to talk, it ends up almost landing like a curse on them. Like, oh, this is something bad in me. And I'm really trying to fight for, guys, your sexuality is not a bad part of you. Maybe it caused a lot of struggle for you, right? Potentially. And you feel like, man, how could this be good? But I'm trying to say this is a good part of you. And I'm trying to really bless that. So you feel not just informed, but in many ways empowered, right? That this is something you can walk well with. It can be a healthy part of your life. It can provide flourishing for your marriage. That's really what I want men to walk away with from this book.
Now, is there a companion book for women, or is this something you recommend for women? And the reason I ask is because I've never really felt a lot of what you're talking about, and I haven't really encountered that with friends of mine either, where they feel like it's a bad thing. I can say I think society can make it into a bad thing, or even some women will turn around and again, make comments like, that's the only thing you think about. Is that the only thing that's on your mind? But I don't know too many guys who feel bad after that commentary. I think they're just like, huh, what, whatever, unfazed.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But I'm sure there are men out there that are like, oh, man, that sucks. I really just wanted a hug, and she's, playing hard to get. And I could see that happening too. And I don't know the percentage between the two groups or if there's even a third group involved. But what I'm saying is what role, if you're looking at a marriage or some other relationship where there's a male and a female, what role does the woman have in understanding? Does the book, I guess, educate women as well to normalize and demystify and take the taboo-ness away of male sexuality?
Yeah, I set out in the book to make sure that women felt honored. Obviously, right? I'm creating a vision for masculinity here. I needed to know that this was going to resonate with women and feel like, oh, they could get this, right? So I definitely even had some women as early readers of the book alongside the men that I did, to really know, like, how is this landing with women? And the feedback was very positive that, it resonated with them. So, again, if the thriving of men does not create the thriving of women, something's off, right? And I am inviting women to see that often guys, when they talk about sex, to understand that this is a place where a lot of desire shows up, not just because they physically want to get release, right? It's because they also want to feel wanted. They want to get touch. And again, I can imagine, right? What guy's going to be able to name that? That would take a lot, a pretty deep-hearted man to be able to name that.
Right. The articulation of that is a different level.
Right. So I'm inviting women to see, like, hold on. It's not just that he wants to get released, so to speak, right, or get off. He's wanting a lot more, and a lot more can show up in that desire. It doesn't mean you have to meet it all the time, right? It's on a man to learn how to grow and asking for what he needs in different ways, right? But I am inviting women to see that, hey, there's more to the story here for guys, and maybe that can start a better conversation in your marriage, right? Not just in a man's life.
Outstanding. I think this is great work, and I'm glad you wrote it. I'm looking forward to checking it out, and I think that's an interesting approach that I haven't really heard much of before. I think oftentimes you're right. Men just get misconstrued as the catch-all for everything is, this guy's a hornball. Whereas, they could just really be looking for affection, looking to connect, looking for a million different things, right? And which is why women turn around and say, that's the only thing on your mind. And it kind of explains that age-old question. So outstanding work. Let everybody know how they can get a copy of the book.
Rich, you can buy the book anywhere books are sold. Go to your favorite. I always recommend local bookstores, but obviously it's wherever books are sold online. And Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all around. So go anywhere you want.
And if people want to check out other stuff that you're doing, your Substack or your social media, tell them where to go.
Yes. So you can go to my website, samjolman.com, SAMJOLMAN.com, or you can search for me on Substack, samjolman.substack.com as well.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having you back to get kind of an update on the result of the impact of the book, and whenever we have a question that somebody with your expertise could answer, and I hope you'll come back soon.
Rich, this has been an honor, and I would love to come back.
You bet. All right, folks, more to come straight ahead. We continue with your questions on this topic and everything else. Plus, U-turn signs have been made illegal. That's right. U-turns used to be illegal. Now U-turn signs have been outlawed in one part of California. I'll tell you more about it when we come back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
LA City Council members Hugo Soto Martinez and Nithya Raman were on hand today to help remove the signs. They say the no cruising and no U-turn signs were put up in the 1990s to prevent people in the gay community from meeting up with other gay people.
I was also surprised that these U-turn signs were still up. And at first, they seem a little, okay, it's just a no U-turn sign. But when you learn the history of it and you realize that these were used to profile gay people, it's so important that we have these removed.
So U-turn signs are now homophobic. Now, what I find interesting here is I understand the angle that they're taking. They're saying that there was a gay bar on one side of the street, and people used to try and picking up other men at the gay bar, so they would drive down the street and make an illegal U-turn. Or maybe at one point it was a legal U-turn, but because there was so much of that going on, the town, the neighbors complained, whomever, and they put up no U-turn signs because it was creating too much of a traffic problem. And the LGBTQ community says that is homophobic, putting up a no U-turn sign because you don't want people making U-turns. I would only imagine that the U-turn sign was there so that you wouldn't make a U-turn, and there was a traffic issue, irrespective of what it was, whether it's a hot dog stand, a gay bar, a barber shop, you name it. Right now, of course, any one of those businesses can protest, as these guys did, and they won. But homophobia, I would say, is not the case. Now, of course, they say this homophobia goes back 30 years to something called the Black Cat protests. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later on in Open Phone America. But I just want to tell you, it's a crazy day when they outlaw U-turn signs because of homophobia. Anyway, straight ahead, we're going to talk about abortion and so much more. Don't go anywhere. I am Rich Valdez. Hour number 2, straight ahead.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. My pleasure to be with you this Friday night, live, national, and looking forward to speaking with you. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And the Supreme Court today struck down a federal ban on bump stocks, which, little attachment that goes on your gun, on your rifle, to make it shoot faster, but not necessarily making it an automatic weapon. And we're going to get into that with some of the pros who are involved with the advocacy towards litigating that case. Not today, probably on Monday. But this is right on the heels of the big case yesterday on the abortion pill, where the Supreme Court said these doctors who brought their claim saying that they didn't want to because of their religious faith and whatnot, they felt that this was not something they should be subjected to. They didn't want to offer this course of treatment. And ultimately, I think the court found they didn't have standing to challenge the FDA, which is ultimately where this ended up. So that was that case. Now, there's a lot of controversy always on both guns and abortion, right? And you got people that are very, very passionate on both sides of the issue. I tend to be pro-gun and pro-life, and that's just my stance. I think there's a lot of people out there that agree with me. I think there's a lot of people out there that disagree with me. But rarely do we ever debate, or I think we debate all the time, where rarely do we ever hear why people choose the position they choose, what the story is behind it. And that's something I want to do today, because Jeff Bradford, who's president of Human Coalition, he has a whole story, and he's got a new book out called Beauty from Ashes. It's coming out in a couple of days, and I want you to check it out if you're so inclined once you hear what it's about and you hear a little bit of his story. But I think that's an important conversation, because him and his wife have a story. And it's a story that I'm going to let him tell you, because I think it's a really moving story, and one that I think we can all benefit from hearing. Jeff Bradford, welcome to the program.
Rich, it's an honor to be with you tonight. Thank you for having me on the show. Unfortunately, our story is one that plays itself out millions of times a year in our country. My wife and I met when she was 19 and I was 21. I was a graduate from the University of Texas at Austin, and we got to know each other and fell in love very quickly. And within just a few months, got engaged to be married. And during our wedding engagement, we got pregnant. And unfortunately, went to my father, who I was very close with and grew up with. And we got really terrible advice, unwise advice, and advice that cost the life of our first daughter. Within just a few days of finding out we were pregnant, we ended up at Planned Parenthood. And we took the life of our daughter and didn't talk about it. Really for 17 years, and really because of the deep shame and hurt that had caused us. And really, by God's grace, we just celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary. But I will tell you that, thank you. But there's not a day that goes by, Rich, that we don't think about the life of our first daughter. It is one of the most painful things and areas of our lives, and has caused great pain and consternation in our marriage. And so the book talks about, really, it's a really transparent and an open memoir of our life, and really the consequences of taking a life. Once you've taken the life of someone, you can never get it back, and it's something that haunts you for the rest of your life.
Jeff Bradford, A, I want to thank you for being here, and B, for being forthright and transparent and willing to share something that's obviously difficult and painful. But I feel we really never hear that side of the story, right? People, I think, on the left, people that are anti-life, will typically make the case that, it's a bunch of middle-aged men, middle-aged white men, people that don't care, religious zealots, Bible thumpers, what have you, that are always telling you what to do with your body and how you're going to make a decision for their life and their problems and their situations, and minimizing the fact that it's life. And here I am with you, with the guest on our show here telling me that you've taken the life of your own child at Planned Parenthood. And I don't mean to rub salt in a wound or trivialize this, but this is the topic of your book, and I think this is a message that a lot of people who have never heard this story could really benefit from hearing. So, when you're a teenager, and you find out, okay, we're engaged to get married, we're in love. Do you get pregnant, and is the conversation kind of like, oh my gosh, we can't have a baby now, what do we do? Are you guys committed in your faith walk? Is that an afterthought? What's the situation like at that moment for you?
Well, unfortunately, we grew up and we would have both considered ourselves Christians and came from Christian families. I would say that we were more cultural Christians looking back on it now, and yet we believe because it was legal, or we convinced ourselves that because the government said it was okay, it must be okay. And yet, honestly, Rich, deep down, we knew something was very, very wrong, and yet we didn't want to show up at the wedding pregnant. And when I went to my father, I had grown up with him. He and my mom divorced when I was 10, and I stayed with my father, and I had a fantastic relationship with him. But I think he didn't understand, and that generation didn't understand. And what people would never say on the other side, the pro-abortion, and they never tell you the pain that comes along with taking a life. And, Rich, at Human Coalition, we work over 40,000 women a year that we work with, and those that believe that abortion is their only option, 76% of those women tell us that they would prefer to parent if their circumstances were different. And that just breaks my heart because, the media says, oh, it's, the chemical abortion's easier than Tylenol, taking a life just empowers women. It doesn't. And these same women that they claim to know tell us that they would prefer to parent. And so that's why, really at Human Coalition, we're stepping in the gap and helping women with housing and education, employment, all those wraparound services, all those barriers that women believe they can't become a flourishing mom because of those obstacles. We help take those away. And I really think that's what we should all be doing.
Well put. Jeff Bradford, stick with us. I want to learn more about the work that you guys are doing at Human Coalition as you continue to unpack the book with us. Folks, we're going to come right back with the president of Human Coalition, Jeff Bradford.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, familia, we continue with Jeff Bradford, president of Human Coalition. And Jeff and his wife became pro-life activists after they themselves had to go through the turmoil of having an abortion as teenagers. Jeff, continue to walk us through the story and tell us how it leads up to you founding this organization, Human Coalition.
Well, it's actually a miraculous story of how God really opened my eyes to the issue of abortion. My wife and I, after our first son, we now have 4 children by God's grace. And after our first son, really came back to the Lord and helped start and build and grow a church. And yet for those 17 years, no one talked about the issue of abortion. We didn't, even as leaders of the church, our senior pastor didn't, and we felt like it was the unforgivable sin. And but during 2008, 9, if you remember that recession, I was in the for-profit world, and there's a tsunami of things that hit us, and the church ended up splitting due to financial issues. And my wife and I had felt like we had given all of our time and away to the ministry and to my work and neglected our marriage. And so we went to Christian counseling. And when we closed the door that first day, my wife began to cry like I had never seen her before. And as we dug underneath that pain, it came down to that decision we made now 32 years ago, the decision to take the life of our first daughter. And up to that point, we had never talked about it. Wow. And that same week, two of the co-founders of what is now Human Coalition handed me their Human Coalition card and said, "Hey, we save babies from abortion using the internet." And I thought, "Oh Lord, what are you doing?" And that was the same week, just a few days earlier, we were in Christian counseling and had dealt with our abortion for the first time. So that just really opened my eyes to the issue of abortion, and I began to see the devastation that it had caused my wife and I, and even, Richard, for me as a Christian man, I talk to so many men now that say, I've never told anyone. I've just stuffed it. And so even men who you think it doesn't affect them, it does deeply.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, because I think this is a side of that story that really nobody really hears about. You're saying you didn't talk about it for 17 years and you eventually got back into the ministry, but it was tormenting you. How was it tormenting you guys, and how did you come to cope with it?
Well, it took almost 2 decades because we didn't talk about it because of the deep shame. And as we look back and even writing the book, we saw really the impact that abortion had on both of us in our marriage. And we look back on different seasons of our marriage where we fought and where, our first 2 years of marriage were extremely difficult. And honestly, I think we probably wouldn't have made it had it, because my parents divorced. I had promised myself that I would never divorce if it had anything to do with me, because I understood the pain of that.
Right. Sure.
And so by God's grace, we stuck together. And it wasn't really until that day in counseling that we began to really deal with that. My wife went through post-abortive healing. And really, I dove into the work in the ministry of Human Coalition, and that was really how I began to deal with my abortion and telling my story and telling, speaking at galas and events. And so many men would come up to me afterwards with tears in their eyes and saying, I'm just so grateful that you shared that story, because I've never, told anyone, and they got to share that. And, unless pastors and people talk about this in winsome and graceful ways, there will be no healing. And there's millions of people that are sitting in the pews and sitting at home that have never dealt with the healing of abortion. And it's a real thing. I can tell you that for sure.
Folks, we're on with Jeff Bradford, president of Human Coalition, humancoalition.org. And Jeff, when you put the book together, I see you aptly named it Beauty from Ashes. Tell us why you chose that title.
Well, it is amazing when you're willing to use your testimony to what was meant for evil, to use it for God's good and glory. He will turn that around. And, we have over 29,000 lives that have been rescued now from Human Coalition, and taking our testimony and being willing to give it to God and say, Lord, use me. And I thought for years, when I first came into Human Coalition, I thought, God, how could you use me? I have the worst story. You need story of people who chose life and chose adoption. I chose death. And yet God used my story and my pain and my passion And now I get to do this, which is one of the most, incredible things to see a mom who, holding a baby in her arms, who would have otherwise taken the life of that child, and saying, thank you for standing in the gap. And that's the most rewarding thing anybody can ever be a part of.
It's an amazing story. Jeff, I want you to let everybody know how they can find out about Human Coalition and support the work that you're doing there.
Yes, humancoalition.org is our website, and it's an amazing ministry. It's amazing work. We work state by state, reaching women who believe abortion is their only option and bringing them into counseling under a nurse and medical licensed doctor. And so we immediately are online. And you talked about the chemical abortion. We have to be online when they're searching for chemical abortion and give them true empowered options and give them the truth about chemical abortion and the devastation that it causes and the pain and what they really could go through by taking the chemical abortion. And so we work with women all over the country, bring them into that system of care and provide them continuum of care, as I mentioned earlier, housing, education, employment, all the wraparound services that women need to empower them to choose life. And so it's an amazing work. We also work in legislation, helping with good legislation that also helps save lives and care for moms.
And let everyone know, if they want to get a copy of the book, Beauty from Ashes, which comes out in a week from now, how do they get a copy?
They can go to humancoalition.org. It'll be on our website, but also beautyfromashesbook.com. That's beautyfromashesbook.com. That should be up here in the next few days, and we'd love for them to get a hold of it there as well.
Well, again, Jeff Bradford, president of Human Coalition, author of Beauty from Ashes. My best to you and your wife. Godspeed to you. Thank you for sharing your story and opening up tonight. I appreciate it.
Yes. God bless you.
God bless. All right, folks, we continue. We're going to switch gears, and we're going to talk about what happens when people have a mental health issue and they go on one of those websites and they talk to a chatbot. Is a chatbot trained to help you with your mental health crisis? Don't go anywhere. We're talking about that straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Amigos, we continue our conversation. And like I was saying earlier, it seems like there's such a focus on mental health everywhere you turn. And everywhere you look, there's these services. You don't even have to leave your house. Since the advent of COVID, people can just stay home and, put their symptoms into some machine and say, oh, this is what's happening. I feel lackluster. I feel this and I feel that. And some little chatbot will come out like the paperclip from Microsoft Word back in the days. And, say things like, how can I help you? And all of a sudden, this thing is supposed to fix your problem. Not a real therapist or psychologist or anything like that, but just this chatbot. And these AI-powered chatbots, I don't think they're doing anything good for mental health. There was a report on this back in April from 60 Minutes on CBS. Listen to this.
We know the majority of people who need care are not getting it. There's never been a greater need, and the tools available have never been as sophisticated as they are now. And it's not about how can we get people in the clinic. It's how can we actually get some of these tools out of the clinic and into the hands of people.
Allison Darcy, a research psychologist and entrepreneur, decided to use her background in coding and therapy to build something she believes can help people in need, a mental health chatbot she named Wobot.
Like Woe Is Me.
Woe is me.
Wobot is an app on your phone, kind of a pocket therapist that uses the text function to help manage problems like depression, anxiety, addiction, and loneliness, and do it on the run.
Listen, I don't care. I'm not there yet. Call me what you want. Call me old-fashioned. Call me Archie Bunker. I have a tough enough time talking to the psychotherapists we have on our program, telling them about my issues. Just imagine the disdain I would have to put my symptoms into a chatbot and have some robot or a wobot talk to me. Now, listen, one person I never have a problem talking to and jumping up into that leather chaise lounge we have here in the studio is none other than Jill Robin Payne. Jill Robin Payne is a fan favorite on this program, and she is a psychotherapist and author of the Bempathy book series. Her latest, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. Jill Robin Payne, welcome back.
Hey, Rich. How are you?
I am doing really, really well. Now, this 60 Minutes report from Dr. John LaPook, he's, trying to give a neutral report there. The person, the coder and therapist that created this Wobot seems to think it's the best thing ever, that, you go, oh my gosh, I feel sad today. I broke up with my girlfriend, and the chatbot is going to give you, I don't know, go to the bar with your friends, pick up a girl. I don't know, whatever advice it's going to give. What are your thoughts, being a practitioner that deals with clients on a regular basis, when you hear about AI chatbots giving mental health advice?
And I looked some up, and there are quite a few. And, of course, she's going to like it. She invented it, or she created it. So, but there's things missing. And I was talking to a doctor friend of mine today about this, and she was saying, what I'm saying is that AI is getting into everything. The workforce, for the news, everything. It's all over the place. Now it's into medicine. There's pros and cons. The con is the empathy is missing. There's not a connection. I guess eventually they're going to feign empathy, and us people, we're going to just start relating to them and feeling like they're one of us. I mean, we even have somebody called Sophia, and she's already a Saudi Arabian citizen, and she's a robot. So I mean, it's not too far off. The bad thing is that these devices they're going to give you some wrong information, because who invented these devices? Well, we did. And so we are imperfect. Yes. And so we have a fallacy where we think these robots or these AI devices are perfect, and we're going to take them as face value. And so that is a big problem there. So there's a lot of things that are not good about it. The good thing about it is it gives people a false sense, I guess that's not good either, but a false sense of security. They feel like they have something at the drop of their hat. They just go ahead and push a button and they get an answer, whereas it would take a while to get your doctor. It would take a while to get your therapist. You'd have to pay money to get your therapist, and these are free. And so it's just something that I think we need to be aware of. I'm just flabbergasted that we're just being so accepting of this, and I think we just need to be more aware of that there are some flaws, and that people need to have face-to-face interaction. Even when I see my clients, Rich, and I do see them virtual, I probably see about 75% virtual. Even those clients will say it's better to come in face-to-face. But this is what we're creating. It's something we need to be aware of.
And I think that I try to look at this like you recommend in your book, to look at things from the third side of the coin. And I know that my initial reaction to this is I'm not interested, right? I don't want to listen to talk radio that's AI. I want a real host that's telling me real things. I don't want a lot of things AI. But I'll tell you what I do accept a lot of times, and I could see why people lean towards this. If I have an ailment, I quickly go to Dr. Google, right? Dr. Google brings me to Dr. TikTok. It brings me to WebMD, and I start reading and reading and reading, and I'll read for 2 hours to get an understanding of things, and not really self-diagnosing, but in many ways, yeah, self-diagnosing, or at least, narrowing down a list of diagnoses. And
right.
And it's, it's kind of part adventure, part lazy, where I just don't want to go. And I'll go and, almost 100% of the time when I go to the doctor and I go, I don't know, I got this pain in my temple, I think it's a sinus infection, or I want to rule out whatever. And they're like, you're reading too much WebMD. So I get that.
Right.
But I think a lot of people do that, right? Right away, they go right to their phone. And I could see how one could do that if they're like, I don't know, I woke up, I feel, it's been a month and I still feel like I'm sad, or I still feel really anxious, or I keep having road rage, or whatever their issue is. And I could see why people would turn to that. So when we come back, I want you to tell us a little bit about, your thoughts on what I just mentioned, because I've had a number of doctors on here that rail against Dr. TikTok, Dr. Google, and Dr. anything else that isn't Dr. them. So, folks, stick with us. We're coming right back with Jill Robin Payne. She's the author of the Bempathy book series, the latest edition, Bempathy, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. We'll talk about that as well before we wrap up. Folks, don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez coming back with Jill Robin Payne.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez. I'm with you straight till 1 a.m. Eastern time. That's another hour and 15 minutes or so, and wherever in the country you are. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys on open phone across America, 833-482-5337. And Jill Robin Payne, one of our favorite psychotherapists, is with us. And Jill Robin Payne, we're talking about a bunch of things. And before we went to break, I was saying that many of us are very comfortable with going on WebMD or Google and, putting in our symptoms and going, oh, yeah, maybe it's this or maybe it's that or whatever. And I guess many of us are doing the same thing with TikTok and Instagram, and doing the same thing with mental health issues, where somebody might be having a bad day or be stressed out, and the next thing you know, they're coming back going, oh, I don't know, I think I have borderline personality disorder, or oh my gosh, I think I'm a narcissist, or oh my gosh, I think, whatever the more dire situation is, with anything mental health related. And I think that's happening quite a bit. And I've had other guests in the past that have reiterated that that's actually happening and how they advise against that. So knowing what we know about that, why do we just do that? Is it because we're lazy? Probably. Is it because we're very inquisitive and curious? Yeah, I'm sure it's part of that too. But what do you think the drawback to that is?
Well, the drawback is, one, mental health. People, we are very complicated, if you haven't noticed. Even men are complicated.
No
so, yeah, really. And the diagnosis of people, even when they come in to see me, I have two doctors I refer. They're addictionologists. I really don't have any psychiatrists that I know of that will help my clients. So to me, it's very hard to find someone that can really give you the right diagnosis. So that being said, these apparatuses or these devices have limited information. The data that's put in them, how much data is put in them. And then the data that is put in them could be incorrect. So that's something for us to watch. And then there's no human interaction. It's in the medical field, I think that's number one. If a client comes to see me, I think 80% of them, of it working is they need to get along with me or like my personality. That's 80% of therapy, and that is not there in these devices. And how about security concerns? You know, when we put our information in these devices, where do they go? People don't think. And mental health is very important and very secretive. It's something that HIPAA really puts a lot of security on. So that right there, I'm not feeling good about. And then you get that chatbot overload. I don't know about you. I get these devices are complicated. I mean, they have all these. I can't
go to pay a bill, every company, anything. There's a little thing that can I help you? Get out of here. You can't. If I need help, I'll ask for it.
And who knows, I might have pushed the wrong button to get the wrong answer. So you can get misleading medical advice. And I think those are all the things that I can think of. One big thing, though, is that mental illness, mental health is very complicated. And even therapists can get it wrong. Psychiatrists can get it wrong. So imagine what these devices do. And then people really listen to them and they have faith in them because, you know, hey, they're a robot. They're AI. They should know everything. So that's a concern.
Yeah. And I think anybody who's messed around with ChatGPT and sees how much information it can muster up with, you know, a very small prompt, it's impressive. You know, I think for many people, they're like, wow, look at that. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you. And something that you said right now, I think, is probably the most poignant thing about therapy is you want to deal with somebody that you trust, and B, that you can relate to, right? That you, like you said, that you like. And I think everybody I know that's been to therapy, like friends of mine that were on the brink of divorce, and I would tell them, you should go to counseling. Give it a shot. Almost 100% of my guy friends, at least, have told me, no. We went. I didn't like the person. And it's like, oh, shoot, well, you got to go again. Find somebody else. You know, you don't have to necessarily, stick with the first person you find. But I feel like people, they judge the entire experience based on that one negative experience or interaction that was less than satisfactory. And that's a big point that you made. So I'm going to pause right here. We're going to come back. I want to talk about the book, Simplify Communication by Looking at the Third Side of the Coin. Our guest is Jill Robin Payne, psychotherapist to the stars. That's me. And I'm sitting on my leather couch here as she is head shrinking me. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, familia, welcome back. And we continue the discussion with Jill Robin Payne. Jill Robin Payne, we're talking about how, young people want to go on TikTok and everybody else wants to go on WebMD and this, that, and the other. And this prevalence of information is called prevalence inflation. And this theory of prevalence inflation or prevalence inflation theory is something that I think is dangerous to us. I want you to explain what it is and how it could be potentially harmful.
Well, basically what they're saying is these are some researchers from Britain, and they were saying that you're saturated with too much information and it's all about mental health. And so therefore, if I'm feeling a little bit shaky, I've got some anxiety, I can make this bigger than it is, and not say a hypochondriac, but just make it bigger than it is. And so it's making our society more focused. If I talk about cheesecake all day, what am I going to think about? I'm going to think about cheesecake all day, and I'm going to probably eat it and get fat. So the same thing goes if I'm thinking about mental health and mental illness, not getting better or the pros about, coping and all this. So it can be a negative. And plus, they're getting all this information, and some of it's not correct. So just like you were talking about some of the disorders that you had mentioned.
Right.
And I think, if you're not a therapist, I've gone to years of school, and I've gotten a licensure, and I've had an internship, a practicum. I've been doing this for years.
And you've written books. And before we run out of time, I want to make sure you tell us about your most recent book. Tell us about that.
Okay. So the most recent one, and just getting back to what you're saying, I have something called dynamic watchfulness, and that's instead of mindfulness. Rich, mindfulness isn't enough anymore. If you're in virtual reality, your brain thinks it's real. So you need somebody in your life, what I call an accomplice. That's part of what dynamic watchfulness is. So it helps you see a third side of the coin. It helps you step back, see another perception. And that's one of the things in the book. It has different ways that we can cope in this world where we're just inundated with a whole bunch of different things. I have something called the map of reflection, which is a life strategy system, and it helps you feel that you're more in control because it gets you to map out the people, places, and things in your life, and the ones that you don't want them to be in your life, you put them in spring cleaning, and you get to focus more on the positive. So these are some things in my book. Yeah, these are some things in my book, and they really work. I've used these with hundreds of my clients, and they love them. They feel more in control, and they end up getting their dreams because they can focus more on what they want, not what they don't want.
Well, I want to get the Dynamic Watchfulness app from Jill Robin Payne and check out JillRobinPayne.com. Jill Robin Payne, let everybody know how they get a copy or 2 copies of the book.
Okay, they can go to Amazon. I'm also going to be on Federal News Network this coming weekend, and they can find me at Jill Robin Payne and get all the information. Go to my website, JillRobinPayne.com. I even have a free book there.
Oh, outstanding. Well, I really do want to learn more about exactly the strategies and what you have in this new book. So I'm going to see if the scheduling will work out. Maybe I can have you back and we could have you on the podcast to do like a continuation or follow-up of this. So, folks, JillRobinPayne.com. Thank you. I appreciate it, Jill Robin Payne. Very, very enlightening conversation. Wish we had more time. The music means they're kicking both of us out of here. Jill Robin Payne, everybody. Thank you for being here, Jill.
Thank you, Rich. Bye-bye.
You bet. All right, folks, Open Phone America is coming up right now. 833-482-5337-833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Muy buenas noches. Hi there. Good evening. What's up, America? I am Rich Valdez. Valdez with an S. At Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the program. It's hour number 3. We like to call it Open Phone America. That's where we take calls from callers all over the country as well as all over the world. For those of you that are streaming the program at richvaldez.com. And if you want to check us out on social media, at Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, 833-482-5337, for Valdez, taking your calls live momentarily on the topics of the night. And we've talked about healthy men's sexuality, and men craving intimacy doesn't always mean that they're looking to be physically intimate, but they might be looking for emotional intimacy. That was a really good conversation with the sexologist, the counselor that we spoke with. He was terrific, Sam Jolman. Then we had some additional conversation with respect to diagnosing stuff and getting advice from an AI chatbot. That's kind of out there as well, I think. And, of course, the heart-wrenching story that we heard from Jeff Bradford. So I want to get your reaction to all of that, but I also want to get your reaction to this ad that was released by El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, Donald J. Trump, El Presidente. And it is his birthday today. Happy birthday, President Trump. And he put out this ad with a montage of timeless quotes by Joe Biden. Listen to this.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
She knows so long as she is denied, our freedom can never be secured. We'll never forget lying around, and that's him lying around, actually.
It is noteworthy that the percentage of women who register to vote and cast a ballot is consistently higher than the percentage of the men who do so. End of quote. Repeat the line.
I'll lead an effective strategy to mobilize true international effort to pressure.
That's my favorite one. Pressure. Now, another one of my favorites was in the beginning of this clip where they say, "It's what defines America in one word." And the foothills in the Himalayas. And the foothills in the Himalayas is not one word. Oh, man. Joe Biden, I tell you, I think he would do way better in stand-up. He would do way better in stand-up with his whispering routine and his tossing to the imaginary single mom. And again, they're not really imaginary, but you can talk about anything. Mr. President, what's your issue with inflation? What I want to know, start yelling at you. What I want to know is what's going on with the mom who's doing homework with her single mom with a child in her home. And he just throws you off, and you're like, wow, yeah, thanks. Thank you, Joe Biden. Tremendo baboso. Anyway, that was the ad by Trump. But, of course, critics, they're out there, and they're saying lots of things. One of President Trump's biggest critics is somebody that I like to call Funny Willis. Now, Funny Willis, she is the district attorney in Georgia. What county is that? I'm forgetting it now. But whatever county that is. Fulton County. Fulton County prosecutor, Funny Willis, and her longtime boyfriend, Nathan Wade, who coordinated with Kamala Harris and the White House prior to bringing this case, although he says he's done none of the above, and he walked away from his interview yesterday. And we'll play that audio. Did we play that yesterday? Did we ever get to it? Yeah, so I'll get to it tonight. But she was on the stage recently, and she was taking aim at everybody that mispronounces her name. And I thought, surely she is angry at people like me that call her Funny Willis. But I was wrong. She wasn't angry at people that call her Funny Willis. She was upset with people that call her Fanny Willis. Listen to this.
While they over there running their mouth, I'm over here paying them no mind. See, I'm so tired of hearing these idiots call my name as Fanny in a way to attempt to humiliate me. Because like silly schoolboys, the name reminds them of a woman's rear.
It's like the comedy writes itself over here, right? This is fantastic. So good for her, I guess, for putting that out there. I never wanted to draw attention to her Fanny because I think she's funny, and that's just a better one for me. But she thinks everyone is calling her Fanny because her name is Fani Willis, that somehow this is about her body. I've never seen this woman's Fanny, so I couldn't tell you. I could tell you I've seen her face, and it's funny. That's mean, right? I shouldn't say that. Poor attempt at humor on my part. But what I will say is she goes by the pronunciation Fani, Fahni. And that was why she had this bone of contention, irrespective of these ethics probes into her choice to have her boyfriend, Nathan Wade, involved in all of this, and she might be removed from the case. A judge has already ruled that either she goes or he goes. Now there's another probe into whether she sticks around or not. I mean, this is professionally, she is what they would call in the media embattled district attorney Fani Willis. But the scrutiny is now obviously on her. She put scrutiny on Trump. It's on her because of the relationship that she had with Nathan Wade, who she made special prosecutor, hired him, paid him $700,000, then said, no, a lot of it was in cash. I like to use cash. She brought her dad in as a character witness to talk about how she used to save money in her piggy bank, more or less. Just very bizarre stuff that's going on. And it's alleged that Willis and Mr. Wade had benefited financially from taxpayer money going on these lavish trips. And then they admitted that they had a relationship but denied any conflict of interest. Now, that's the case. Now, Mr. Wade, in addition to Fani Willis saying, hey, don't call me Fanny, Mr. Wade did this interview. And I talked about it yesterday, but I didn't play the audio, and we've got two clips, right? We've got two clips, one where there's some conversation going on, and then he's asked a question, and he starts to squirm. So first, let me give you the first part. Go right ahead.
Just to clarify, when did the romantic relationship between the two of you start?
Yeah, so, we get into, there's been this effort to say that, okay, these exact dates are at issue, and these exact dates are, I'm getting signaled here.
At this point, he's squirming around. He's touching his ear. He's looking over the Caitlin Collins is from CNN. He's looking over her shoulder. His attorneys come. They're like, can we talk to him off mic? They start unclipping all the microphones and everything, and they bring him over there to let him know, you can't talk about this stuff. Clearly it's at issue because it's a conflict of interest.
To clarify,
Sangano.
Romantic relationship
So,
started and when it ended.
Sure. So, I believe that the public has, through the testimony and other interviews, the public has a clear snapshot that this is clearly just a distraction. It is not a relevant issue in this case, and I think that we should be focusing on more of the facts and the indictment in the case.
There you go. Trying to, obfuscate a little bit, shift some of the blame that's going around. Obviously, the question that the media has, even CNN is being curious here, is because it makes a whole lot of sense that they could have this whole enterprise, right? This little side hustle where we're going to bring this case against Trump, probably the first of its kind, a RICO case against a politician, let alone a former president of the United States, for performing duties that he deemed to be important for his role as president of the United States, because he was still president at the time that he was asking Secretary of State Raffensperger the questions about ballots and finding ballots that were missing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So very interesting to me how he was about to say, that stuff is in there. They keep trying to paint this on me about the dates of the relationship. So who cares? If he was about to put his foot in his mouth, his lawyer stopped him. He came back. He was very poised. The bottom line is the information that he has, and it's going to come out under oath. It's going to come out. They're going to depose him. Something's going to happen, right? It's not just going to end here. This information is going to sink him. in my opinion, one way or another. I mean, he may keep his job. He may not go to jail. I'm not saying anything like that. But ultimately, his reputation is taking a beating. And so has Funny Willis. Likely, she's probably been in heat and in the public eye before, but probably not this way. All right, this is probably the height of the scrutiny that she's faced. And it's likely not going to get better until it's over because of how aggressive she was and overreaching in bringing this case. So those are some of the things we're talking about now. We're going to get to your calls in a moment. Florida, Kansas, Montana, Idaho, and more. What's this international call? We got a lot going on here, folks. I am Rich Valdez, coming right back. Open Phone America.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Well, Mr. Valdez, you have one of the greatest shows that radio's ever had.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, and to the phones we go. I want to go to Eduardo in Tampa, Florida. And the mystery question is, what radio station do you listen to this program on?
Hey, Rich, how's it going? Well, I'm from Chicago, and so I listen to, if I'm listening online, I'm listening to WGN playback, too, because I'm usually from Chicago. But I really don't listen to it here in Tampa. I'll listen to it online or on WGN.
Got it. Well, big shout out to them. And what's on your mind tonight, Eduardo?
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep it international here. I got Mr. Omar here from the Nobel Museum over here. I'm watching these protesters over there in New York here while I was waiting here. I guess they got a nice exhibit over there. So they're offended that that museum is over there. But I was going to comment on Belgium. Because they're homeschooling their young people over there, and homeschooling is very good. I mean, people I think learn more, and they learn an instrument. I even saw this one German who, right after high school, travels on.
Is this what you told the call screener?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Oh, the note I has here says people in the U.S. need to remember how good they have it.
Oh, oh my goodness! Well, as far as U.S., I think the young people here in the U.S. are pampered. I mean, if I were an employer, I'd probably hire people from overseas because they got the more scars as far as better work ethic. So, I wish
all right, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Let's continue. Let's go to Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Hopefully you are Frank. Hopefully you're on KOFI, and hopefully you're talking about homophones.
Yes, I would say that Fanny has got a case of acute homophonophobia, a case where two words pronounced.
You're talking about Funny Willis.
The same. Yeah, well, it's Fani is her name, but it's spelled the same. I mean, pronounced the same, but spelled differently. But people have. She's trying to draw attention to it, but like she's got the phobia of it. Maybe perhaps she should change her name if it's really too much for her, or get a butt reduction or something. But no.
Change the spelling of her name or get a butt reduction, whichever one works for you, ma'am. Oh, that's funny. That's Funny Willis, sir. Oh, Frank, that was a good one. Thank you, brother. I needed that laugh. KOFI, big shout out to you guys there. Now, before you go, Frank, I wanted to get your take on this stuff that we were talking about earlier about intimacy and AI as well. I know you always have a lot to say. What's your thought on men being intimate? And B, do you think they're afraid and they're ashamed to do it? And B, follow up on, do you go to get mental health advice from a chatbot?
I want to go to the mental device here with the chat box. Again, we can go into homophobia. And, well, I have that kind of a phobia where if I'm in a chat box and AI is assuming I'm saying one word when I'm actually saying another, that there could be dire consequences, especially in a medical situation, perhaps, and it just is, or even driving, instruction, etc., and just trying to come up with a universal translator for what 36,000 different languages. My gosh, what is it in New York City now? It's incredible.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have, it's just a mind blower. Jeez. Anyway, I just wanted to add something.
Yes, go ahead.
My daughter helped deliver a male boy with the baby had webbed toes. Now, this is common amongst baby boys, more so than girls.
Is this a baby that she helped deliver because she's a medical person, or a baby she delivered because it was her baby?
She's a doctor. She's a medical doctor. But here's the case, if it wants to become an Olympic swimmer, and it wants to be a trans competitor in the women's team, my gosh,
it's built-in cheating, right?
Yes.
It's got flippers on.
Well,
anyway. My gosh. I don't know if that was fair to say, but I see where you're going with it. Oh, Frank, thank you for the call, man. That was good. Nothing like Frank in Evergreen in Montana on a Friday. Let's see. Where do we go with a minute to go? I don't want to cut anybody short, so we've got calls from other areas. We're going to come to you right after we go to this break. I want to remind everybody of the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDES, and the website. If you're streaming the show, and there's a lot of people streaming the show live, we do stream it live right on the website, richvaldes.com. That's Valdez with an S. All right, my friends, we're coming right back with the second half of this hour. Looking forward to speaking with you. Grab your phone. If you've never called this show before, today's the day to call. Looking forward to speaking with you. 833-482-5337. Don't go anywhere.
Now, 833-4-VALDES. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDES. That's Valdez with an S.
Welcome back. Wanted to get to some audio that I'd sent about 7 or 10 hours ago, but we don't have it, so I can't play that for you. And that stinks. I was really looking forward to doing that today. Anyway, let's go back to the calls. Let's go to Roger, Akron, Ohio, WNIR.
Well, hello, Rich.
Hello.
Hello?
Please talk, sir.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, the world is hearing you.
Oh, right. I thought I hung up on you almost when I...
All right, come on, you're killing airtime. Let's go.
Okay. Hey, you were cracking me up with the Funny Willis part there. I don't think much of her either. I remember watching the hearings leading up to getting rid of Wade, and she was like, she would address the woman that brought up the relationship. I forget who she was that was forced the hearing about it, and she said I was waiting to face you. I couldn't wait to get in here and face you. I ran over here, and it was like she was going to beat her up or something. It was kind of funny.
She's a malcontent, and listen, I know a thing or two about being a malcontent myself. I definitely have my moments, but I think she takes the cake, and it's interesting how she's in all this hot water. God knows what's going to end up happening with her career as a prosecutor and moving forward after trying to indict the president of the United States, a former president of the United States, potentially the next president of the United States, on a RICO charge when the guy's committed really no crime that resembles organized crime, but trying to stretch it that far. And the only thing that she wants to talk about is how people mispronounce her name because it's like locker room humor for little kids in grade school talking about her rear end. I think she's off her rocker, and while it's funny, it's really kind of sad to think that this is the state of affairs in Fulton County, Georgia. But I think you're right on, Roger. Thanks for the call, brother. Hear you loud and clear. Big shout out to everybody on WNIR. Let us continue as we go into Father's Day weekend. We got a call from my buddy Gil in Manila, Philippines. Gil, go right ahead.
Yes. Happy Father's Day. Feliz Dia del Padre, mi gran amigo. Okay.
You too.
Couple of things. Your good friend, Tony Orlando, his last show at the Mohegan Sun is on YouTube. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't. I didn't know he actually stopped playing there.
Well, it was billed as his last show. He brought together his former backup singers, Dawn.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I did see a recent performance with him and Dawn. So maybe I did see it and I overlooked it. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah,
well, he's the Greek-Arican Mick Jagger. He's still rocking at 80. So anyhow.
Wow, I didn't even know Tony Orlando was 80. So let me tell you a funny story about that, right? I first met Tony Orlando interviewing him, doing morning radio in New York City. And I had no idea, that he ever had heard of me. I just was like, Tony Orlando, what a pleasure, blah, blah, blah. And I'm asking him a question about whatever. And I said, so, Mr. Orlando, what's it like to be whatever? And he says, well, hold on, let me tell you something. He tells me, I'm Greek, but my mother's Puerto Rican. That makes me a Greek-Arican, so we have something in common. And you can please call me Tony. And I said, well, then you have to call me Rich, because he was calling me Mr. Valdez, and I felt way overly too formal. And what a nice guy. And then a year or two later, we end up working together because he gets a show on WABC in New York City. And it was on a weekend show, and I had a weekend show as well. And we crossed paths. We became friends. Really awesome guy. And I never in a million years would have thought he's 80, probably because I never, tried to figure out how old he was. But what I can tell you, from a position of being vibrant and being just enthusiastic about life and his career and what he's doing, I would have 62, 63. I never would have thought he was 80 years old. So interesting point, Gil. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I hijacked your story.
Okay, but I wanted to also mention Father's Day. Right now, I'm a very, very proud dad. My daughter here is under the tutelage of the U.S. Army recruiter in Guam, and she's going through all the hoops that she has to jump through to join the U.S. Army and to go into military medicine. I did that as my second Army career in 1980. So I'm very proud.
Well, I'm thankful for your service and her service, and I want to wish you a happy Father's Day. And I'm sure that's a really proud moment for you. What dad wouldn't be proud? So good for you, Gil, and happy Father's Day to you. I appreciate the call. Godspeed, my friend. And let's see. We continue with our conversation here. Let us go to Topeka, Kansas. KMAJ, and check in with D. D, welcome. You're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hi, thank you. I haven't listened to you long, but I really enjoy your show and the variety of guests that you have. I wanted to talk about, I'm against gun control, and let me give you, I thought of an extra point while I was waiting. So the first one is I read an article some time ago, but most mass shooters have some type of mental illness. You probably, maybe you remember, there was a term called going postal. And so in the 80s, you would have the postal workers under a lot of stress, and they would go and they would shoot up their workplace and their coworkers. 3, back in the day, judges were called justices of the peace, cops were called peace officers, and your pistol was your peacemaker. Also, when my parents were kids back in the day, you might have had like a deputy and a sheriff to cover the whole county, and phones were not as prevalent as they are now.
Right.
And so you would keep the rifle over the front door or the back door, and you knew that wasn't a toy, and you don't touch it because you might have to, an adult or someone would have to grab it and take care of business, you know. And back in the Midwest and in some rural areas, it was not uncommon to see a pickup truck, and in the back of the cab would be a gun rack, sometimes with shotguns and rifles. And sometimes those pickup trucks were driven by teenagers parked in parking lots at high schools, but no one shot up the school, even though they had the availability of guns.
You know, Dee, I've had a couple of people call in that told me that they took marksmanship courses when they were in high school, and that they had rifles in the back of their pickup truck, and they would bring them to school every day, and it was part of what they did in school, and there was never an issue with that. And it's funny that you say that, right? Because if I had to put on my tinfoil hat, I would say that going postal was probably the training ground to perfect the school shooter of today, right? Back in the 80s, like you said, there were no school shootings, or very, very little, until the 90s when Columbine really kind of kicked it off. And they existed, but they were not a prevalent thing. And for whatever reason, whether it's part of the media pushing the narrative, part of something else pushing the narrative, or creating those conditions, the people in the post office don't seem to lose their head anymore and shoot all their colleagues. So going postal was a term that kind of dissipated, right? It's not around anymore. And in the same way, we now have this overabundance of, and if there's one, there's too many, obviously, of shootings at schools. And it just makes me wonder, you know, is there more than meets the eye with these shootings? And did they start with postal people and transition them to, you know, trans and non-binary people to shoot up schools? I don't know the answer to that, but it makes me go, for sure. Dee, I want to thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. I could talk to you forever, but we got to take a pause right here. Big shout out to you in Topeka, Kansas, and everybody listening on KMAJ. And folks, are coming right back with the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Let's take this seriously. Let's understand that we all have the ability to weigh in on this important issue, especially when 1 in 5 Americans has a family member that was killed by gun violence, when we know that gun violence is the #1 cause of death of the children of America. Not cancer, not car accidents, gun violence. So voters have a choice in November.
Thankfully, I don't have any guns that are violent. I hope your guns are very peaceful, mostly peaceful, fiery but peaceful, but not violent. I would recommend to the Vice President, que mala eres, that she stop buying violent guns and that she go with the guns that are nonviolent. Because many guns are nonviolent. I would say actually all guns are nonviolent, but That, of course, is Vice President Kamala Harris hating on the Second Amendment and our right to keep and bear arms. Let us go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Jim, go right ahead.
Yeah, from 1976 to 2003, I was a pharmaceutical salesman in Pittsburgh area. I used to call them state hospitals. They closed them all, and they did it in all other states because the liberals said, oh, well, these people were, against their will, blah, 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 blah. However, what happened was this. They went into group homes. They became walking time bombs. The biggest thing is schizophrenia. Now, 99% of the times they're harmless, but the 1% are paranoid schizophrenics. They hear voices and they act on them. Now, at Sandy Hook shooting in, I think it was 12 years ago, 2012, I believe, that kid had it. I mean, he was locked in his room with blah, 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 had a gun. Another example, if you remember that shooter that shot about 25 people down in the Walmart in Waco, well, he lived in Dallas. It's a 8-hour drive. He drives down there. He doesn't, self-kill. He doesn't kill himself like a lot of them do. Down here, he goes, well, I thought it was far enough away my parents wouldn't find out about it. I mean, the guy was mentally ill. This is, it's not the gun. It's the mental illness. The people, I mean, law-abiding citizens have guns all the time, and what people said is true. I'm 72. I remember, I didn't live in a rural area. I lived right in the city of Pittsburgh, but in outlying areas, they did have rifles. There's no problem, what the woman said was mental illness, but it's to the point now they want to blame the gun. That's the Democrat. Mm-hmm. They want to, like Kamala Harris, she's clueless, of course, and she wants to go on a mantra that, too many guns, too many guns. Well, the gun doesn't pull the trigger.
I think you're right. I've never seen a gun pull a trigger. I've never seen a gun that was violent. I've never seen a gun that had a bad day. Guns are tools, and I think anybody with logic knows that. The argument that they make is that, and again, this is just how they do it. If you get to redefine vernacular and how we speak as a society, you can turn anything into anything, right? And that's the sad part of it. That, somebody comes up with the term gun violence. I'd never heard this word until, 7-8 years ago. And all of a sudden, gun violence is everywhere. People are always talking about it. In the inner city, I see gangbangers talking about, we lost a lot of our friends to gun violence. Gun violence? No, you lost your friend to other gangbangers that were shooting them. Gang violence. I'm down for that. I'm not down for gun violence. But yeah, good point, Jim. I appreciate it. KDKA in the building. By the way, speaking of KDKA, my home girl, Wendy Bell, who's on KDKA, she has a television show on Newsmax, and I'll be on her show this weekend. Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. I'll also be on with my former colleague, Rita Cosby, on her show on Newsmax tomorrow morning. We'll be doing that live from New York City. So keep an eye out for our commentary and analysis on all sorts of things with respect to the news and culture and everything else we talk about over the weekend. And let's see. I take a pause here. I come back to the speed round. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, we've got a speed round and not a lot of time, so let's go to the phones very quickly. I want to go to Ron, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead quickly.
Hi, Rich. Just wanted to expound on what Dee had said about kids driving around with guns and pickup trucks. I grew up in the Bronx, graduated high school in 1965. I was on the rifle team at DeWitt Clinton High School in my sophomore year, and I went back and forth to school with my rifle on a city bus. No one gave me a second look.
One of those BX buses that went cross town, going straight to the school with your rifle, and never had a school shooting incident, Ron, I bet. Thank you for the call, brother, and for adding some clarity to that. WTMA in the building. Let's continue. Paul, Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, thank you for the belly laughter at the first the third hour here. That was great, man. That's a good start. I had a rough day at work yesterday, so thank you. But no, what I wanted to say real quick was my daughter, who's a Democrat like I was, she looked at me. Her and my wife come home from the Amish country. We was going through all the goodies, and she goes, Dad, she goes, even if I was still a Democrat, she goes, I just don't know if I could vote for Joe Biden.
I get
after watching him at the G7, and she's like, Dad, I couldn't even do it. So I just think that the people need to look at this guy's middle state. He's declining bad. And real quickly, I think that if he goes out and they have to put Kamala Harris or something like that, they will pardon Hunter Biden. Now, could they do that?
That's interesting, right? Like a Gerald Ford type of thing when with Nixon leaving. That's something we didn't think about. Very interesting. Does he leave, and does Kamala Harris do the dirty work? Very good point, Paul in Zanesville, Ohio, WHIZ. Happy Father's Day, Paul, by the way. And let's go to Atlanta, Georgia, WDN, land of Funny Willis. Jason, go right ahead.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Yes, quickly.
I just wanted to try out the idea that well, the whole Sandy Hook thing sketched me out with Alex Jones. I felt like the whole idea that, that these were actors and stuff like that was like a distraction from the actual killer. And then as with many cases, I wonder if it could be something related to MK Ultra or other.
A lot of people
programs.
wonder if it's related to MK Ultra. And for people who are listening and don't know what that is, I recommend you look it up. CIA.gov has lots of, information about MK Ultra mind control program that the CIA did. It was an illegal program they did in about 80 different American universities where they used LSD and other psychedelic drugs to get people under control, to control their mind, to get them to do things. And many suggest that this led to a breed of killers that can be basically activated by the CIA on a whim, whether it be a postal shooter, a school shooter, or any other type of, Vegas shooter, all sorts of crazy. And I can't corroborate anything beyond what the CIA has declassified. But when you look at the FOIA requests for Project MK Ultra, it really is eye-opening stuff that many of us thought only comes out of the movies. So, Jason in Atlanta, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Al in Kalispell, KOFI, thank you for your call. Happy Father's Day to you. Hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Have a great Father's Day weekend. We'll be back on Monday, and I've got some funny stuff about hitting your head and waking up with a foreign accent. You don't want to miss that on Monday. And that's it. I'm out of here. God bless.